right, so today's March 28th, 2021, and this time we're doing our actual Desiderata Extinctionati meeting. How did you want to do this? Any reactions to Lierre Keith's interview? What do you want to discuss right now?
Yeah, let's discuss that.
Can I say something about Lierre's?
Yeah,
Start there. I mean, if she's coming back, we can probably talk to her about it. But I was thinking about even if all Lierre's dreams came true, we still lose a lot of human beings off the planet in a fairly short period of time. And that's going to happen anyway. But I don't know, Sophie, have you read her book? Does she actually touch on that at all? The kind of realization that people have got to come to, that there's a bottleneck that humanity is approaching, and like I don't know. Can I just ask that? Does she address that at all in the book? Do you know?
I can't remember that. I can remember that on the other writers of the book I read, which was Deep Green Resistance. I think Derek Jensen is a bit more of a doomer. I can't recall. I'd have to look again. Lierre, so abrupt about our future. I can't answer that question. I don't know. We'd have to ask her.
I don't know. Yes, I know. She comes back.
But maybe she plays with the idea, because she says that radical action, she said it when she was talking. She was saying, you know, she agreed if we had time, we could do that, and we don't have time. So I think I don't know where she is in that line at all.
No, she seemed a little bit contradictory, because on the other hand, she was sort of going on about the grassland reclamation and all this kind of thing. So it was a long-term project, but there was some possibility that we'd actually go through with. But even if it did happen, you know, I mean, you've got billions of human beings currently laying claim to that land for other purposes who are not going to let it go.
She's a farmer, and she needs long-term. I mean, you know, if you are on a project, and if she's really wanting to do what she's doing, I suppose she needs to think long-term, even having at the back of her mind that it might be futile. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, well, of course, yeah. I mean, I guess it's that sort of principle of doing the best you can, even though, you know, you might not get to some dream. Sorry, I'm not being very articulate. Well, I think what I was trying to get to was that I think it's an important part of the entire story to lead people to really get it, that a lot of people are going to go, and they're going to go no matter what the scenario is. And I think that's probably the beginning of getting people more serious about what they're doing, how they're behaving. You know, it's a bit like what Hugh was saying about XR, that like 50% of the people he polled were still talking about 2100, you know. There's this real schism between people who think there's a reasonably long future in which something can be done, and people who are just you know, absolutely looking at a short-term, you know, certainly civilizational collapse. Sorry, do you want to come in, Sophie or Hugh? Because I'm not being very articulate at the moment. Can you pick up on what I'm doing, what I'm saying?
Yeah, do you want to talk, Sophie? So I think we'll have to check with her, but I think that she and Derek is kind of like on the Michael Mann point of view, and that's that we all know we're screwed. It's just a question of how screwed, and nobody knows how screwed we are. So I think the only thing that makes sense is you barrel forward understanding that we're all screwed and the civilization is screwed. But you try and mitigate the damage as much as possible. So it's not a question at this stage. I think everybody agrees that the train goes over the cliff. It's just a question of what speed it goes over the cliff now. So the reason why nobody wants to have this conversation is because it gets kind of treads on people's wokeism very quickly. Because the first thing you have to say is, if you're going to try and make sure that some people have the best hope, who are they? Now, straight away, people start, in England, say, where they're all privileged and massively over-optimistic about their prospects on a tiny little island. It's just, when you talk about refugees, they think of all these brown people swarming into Britain. And when I talk about British refugees, I'm talking about part of the 64 million Britons that won't be able to feed themselves. There's only enough land space to feed half the population. So, if you're looking for refugees, they're streaming out of Britain, not into Britain. But, that blows people's minds straight away, although it's as obvious as anything. Places like Japan, I think, what are they, 120 million or something? It's like, that's a very small island to have 120 million people on, And so when you start looking at who are the best survivors, it gets complicated because it depends on your view of, what you can do in terms of climate mitigation. If it's solar panels and wind farms, then all the people in cities survive. My view is that the people in cities are the vulnerable ones. 70% of us will be in cities soon. Over 50% of the world's population is cities. And I pretty much think that if you're realistic, you've got to write them all off. I mean, there's cities, what the hell are you going to eat? You're going to eat concrete? It's like, those cities will have to be evacuated to the surroundings. I mean, go and look at every situation from Uruk to Ur to, all the cities in Mesopotamia that are now dust bowls. You go and look in South America, and they all evacuate the cities. They can't, because the cities are a big hub where all these resources are sucked into the center. If those tentacles and lines of communication and logistical channels break down, the people in the cities have to leave and abandon the city. And that's why you find all these abandoned cities. So, if you look at a place like Rome or something, Rome almost got abandoned. It didn't get abandoned totally because there was still some communication routes. There was still some sea routes and stuff. But everything now is so fragile and so high tech. You just saw in the Suez. It's like, our society is far too brittle for the cities and those logistical networks to survive. Because if you think of like a plowed field somewhere in America, the corn is not actually edible. People don't realize that. They think, oh, there's oceans and oceans of corn from Iowa all across the Midwest. And you say, it's not edible. You can't go into a cornfield in America, grab a load of corn and start chowing down. They've genetically modified it and bred it so that it only works in an industrial food system. They extract it into about 150 different nutrients, and those all go through General Mills and get into your Cheerios and stuff. But they only components that they do additives to, and they do an industrial process to, so you can't just go pick them and eat them out of the field. And also they're too toxic. There's some of those fields, like Idaho potatoes, the farmers have these circular watering irrigation circles for these, can't remember what these arms, these irrigation arms that swing around in a big circle. And then those things are, they absolutely, like Lierre said, they're absolutely dead. You might as well grow the plants in an inert substance. You might as well grow it in a petri dish. It's growing it in chalk, in effect. So they have to put all the nutrients in, and they have to put all the pesticides in so that they can get the yields up. So herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizer. And so it's a completely artificial environment, but they have to put so much things like herbicides and pesticides in that if those irrigation arms break down in an Idaho potato farm, it's too dangerous for the farmer to go in to repair that thing. He has to wait, for the next season or something to go and repair it, because you'd have to go in there with a biohazard suit to work on one of those things. What those things rely on is that when they take those potatoes out of the field, they rely on a gap of about 2 weeks to get to the store shelves. And in those 2 weeks, the scientists say, well, they kind of have a half-life. And by the time you get to the shelf, it's got like 10% of its toxicity, and then that just squeaks in under the FDA rules. But if you see, that system is what we have to do to have mass nutrition, and particularly in the States, corn. So it's basically corn and alfalfa. So if you say that if that system breaks down, if the guys can't get phosphorus or fertilizer or do the Haber-Bosch process to actually feed those crops, if they can't get the water, or if they can't transport these things or run all the mills and factories in the food system, the 5 or 6 food companies, then the people in the cities are fucked, to put it mildly. And I don't think anybody realizes that. I don't think anybody's telling people that, but it's well known by the government. If you look at
this is yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
This is what I'm trying to get to. This is what I was trying to get to, which we might get the chance to talk to Lierre about, was getting people to this point where they really understand that kind of thing, that it's not an abstraction, and of course, implied in what you're saying is the extreme fragility of the system. I mean, I think that ship in the Suez is just the poster child of it's just such a wonderful example of everything that's embodied in this, from energy use to industrialization gone crazy to hugely extended supply lines, everything. It just it's all contained in that story about that ship. I was quite fascinated with it. The way it. Do you know if they've actually moved that yet? Is it still there?
I know it's still there.
Yeah, I'm betting. I want to make a bet.
I saw some pictures there. Just I don't want to say too much about that thing, but I saw some pictures.
Well, I do.
well, like I went back and looked at Earth Null School to just make sure about the wind story. Bollocks. I went back and then looked at the pictures of them mining it out, and that ship plowed in there at about as full speed as you can get. So it's like, dude,
okay.
I don't know how
this is what.
So weak.
Do you mind if we talk about this for a minute? Because I got into it a little bit.
Just let me close the door.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, but it's perfect, that bottleneck thing, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, first of all, I want to lay a bet with somebody. I don't think they'll ever move that ship. Or if they do, they're going to have to take it apart. But what actually got me onto being a bit suspicious was probably something you posted a while ago about the shipwrecking yards in Turkey. Or if I kind of must have got there from one of the maritime web links that you'd posted. And I spent a long time looking at these people ramming the ships up onto the mudflats. And the views were videos from all different elevations, and you could see, how far up onto the mudflat the ship got and all this kind of thing. And almost the first thing I noticed about the Ever Given was that it is just rammed up there so much further than any of those deliberately rammed up ships were at the wrecking yards. And then when you add the fact that it's fully loaded as well.
So those ships go up the canal at a walking pace, because the ships
that's right.
all the time, right? It's not. This is not the first ship that ever got grounded in the canal. No, this is definitely I was going to say not right, but I think it's definitely right.
Not right. But
the thing
even so, though, I mean, you know, whatever it is, almost 250,000 tons at walking pace has got the most phenomenal amount of momentum at any rate. What are the banks of that canal like? Are those banks really?
At full speed, it takes those things 7 miles to stop.
To stop, yeah. What are the banks of the canal like? Are they just sandy?
They're just sand.
Is it very soft?
It's just sand.
It's
It
just
has
sand.
to be dredged all the time.
And a friend in Egypt told me that there was a storm that day. I just got a
yes,
message.
but they're talking about.
I went and looked at Earth Molecule. I couldn't see anything.
No, but we don't really know, because they told me that there was a sandstorm. Now, I'm not saying that there's a causality between the two events.
Yes,
but it's you know.
Did you see the dick pic?
Yeah. But I've seen the edge of the Suez Canal, and it's sandbanks. There's a few little places where there's concrete. But if you look at photographs, satellite photographs, even, you can see that on the edge of the Suez Canal, there's people growing stuff like this. It's just like earth and sand, and there's no, it's you know, there's nothing, there's hardly anything hard there. It's just
no.
I'm puzzled. I know nothing about this, but I'm very puzzled about this event.
So what?
That's why I posted on Reddit that somebody might have done something, because.
The thing is,
I think it's probably a state actor, and I presume it's probably the one with the square head. It could be Pooh Bear, because I saw trending on Google Trends is that so wait, I must have another version open somewhere. Hang on a second. I'm hearing an
you're breaking up here. You're not clear.
I'm hearing a big echo. Can you hear me?
There's no more echo now, but there was earlier.
Okay. So yeah, well, obviously maybe there was a bit of surveillance kicked in there. But yeah, I think I saw trending on Google Trends that the server message blocks, SMBs, which are things in Microsoft, which are a little bit vulnerable. The maritime industry is tremendously vulnerable in terms of IT. They're an easy target. And I thought it was very, very strange that the guys in China, they all, was the only region that had a big spike in searches recently for SMB. And so, yeah, there's this thing called Ghost SMB. I think it might be that. And you have to find out whether they had Microsoft things on board.
So they could have then switched off the engines, the port or starboard engines on one side or something. And
no, they only got one. No, what I expect they did is it's pure speculation, but I expect they got it up to full speed and then jammed the rudder hard over. So yeah, but also the other thing that doesn't fit is that you would normally hear something like they would pin it on one of the helmsmen or whoever was on watch, and you would hear, like Exxon Valdez, oh, the helmsman was drunk and that song, and you're like, you never heard it. Nobody was fired. Nobody was just like, it's
perfect. It's an absolute diamond of a spot to do something like that, because something is going to, on top of the already messed up supply chains all around the world because of COVID, they're all going to have to go around Africa, and that's a disaster, isn't it, for costs and for piracy and whatnot.
Yeah, but there's so many actors in this thing, it's hard to tell who it is and what their motives are. But there is a growing bunch of guys who watch Assassin's Creed a lot. So so basically, when activists talk, and especially green activists, they're on the left, and they they don't see the big underbelly of this beast. But there are a lot of actors that run the gamut, from guys doing insurance scams in China on ships, to state actors, to activists that are, putting Uncle Ted's dream into practice. So there are huge numbers of forces arrayed here. But you see, on the green side, they don't see it because they're all street activists, and they don't know that all of this is going on under the waterline.
Just to go back here to what you said about the captain, I think that was also interesting, because normally when that kind of thing happens, the first thing that happens is we want a scapegoat. The Egyptian authorities have just arrested the captain on suspicion of blah, 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 and a massive investigation has...
The Egyptians would...
but all that's happened is the captain has said, oh, there was a bit of a storm, and that kind of vanilla story is all there is.
It's all wrong. The whole crew would... I mean, this is freaking Egypt. Egypt, you do anything, they'll stick you in Abu Ghraib in a hole somewhere. It's like these guys are not pacing around the deck after they do that. This has big repercussions for Egypt. They would, haul them off and make mincemeat out of them. But the
other thing was too
the ship owners to pay up or something, But I mean, there's no way in Egypt you go and do this, and you go, oh yeah, well, sorry about that, guys. Can you help me get it? It's like, no. And then the other thing that was really suspicious is they sent a US team out, and it's like, okay, I got the picture. But what fascinates me?
But the other thing is, look, I mean,
it's so bad. Can you imagine that? Like, if this was in the 1930s or 20s. You would have real reporters and speculating on. I mean, like, look at the wreck of the Maine, in Havana, and what all the newspaper articles and the conspiracies and the intrigue and analysis, and now nothing, zero. You think, seriously, have we got this dumb? But we have.
Even the other thing is
about the silence on this thing, because it's an enormous thing, and I did look at yesterday. I went through the different media. Sometimes I check. We're trying not to get nauseous. And nothing. There's tiny. There's no deep. I know with COVID it's difficult to travel. Getting into Egypt is tricky, and that part of the canal is quite far away from Cairo. But I mean. Yeah, that silence. I don't understand it. Well, I do in the light of what you said.
No, I understand it. So the repercussions of this, I don't think people realize what happens behind the scenes. You can't just start sending all these ships around the Cape. For one thing, they're not budgeted to take on all the extra fuel oil to go around the Cape, and they're not insured. So you could theoretically bring down Lloyd's or something, or make Lloyd's very rich by bankrupting, Maersk and these container lines. Because if they diverted all ships around the Cape, they would probably have to reinsure them, and it would cost them so much that it wouldn't be feasible to do it. So most of them, I think, would lay furlough and waiting for it. But if you think in terms of like the fresh goods and unrefrigerated stuff that's just going to shit in it, you can't really.
Well, they've got some of those ships are supposedly got animals on at the moment. But
just in
looking into I was looking into some of the figures. And I mean, a ship like that. They were talking somewhere getting towards 400 tons of fuel oil a day to run that thing. And you look at all, if ships like that have got to go around the long way, just fuel costs, let alone anything else. But also, when you get to a machine that is that vast, it's almost half a kilometre long.
One thing I didn't do, which I should have done, is look at the Baltic Dry Index. So if you have a look at the Baltic Dry Index, it's the cost of actually hiring a dry goods vessel. So if the Baltic Dry Index suddenly peaks, and it should, because all these everybody's booked these ships to carry their goods around, and if they all delayed somewhere like in the Suez and the Med, then it throws everybody's supply chains out and should drastically raise the cost of shipping dry goods, because basically there aren't containers to ship stuff in. So if you see the Baltic Dry Index spike, that would be interesting. There'd be repercussions from that. The Baltic Dry Index is a very good thing to watch. Just in general.
This could be one of these. This could be one of these events, a little bit like when the first news of the virus came out, and nobody said much, and we're going to contain this and all the rest of it, but then it kind of was suddenly everywhere, and I just get a feeling that this is one of these stories that everybody's thinking, oh yeah, it's just there, it's just in the Suez Canal, but you can see the potential.
What is the percentage? I mean, okay, we talk about an enormous traffic going through the Suez Canal. We talk about Egypt losing 6 or 7 billion a year. But what is the proportion of marine, of trade, container trade that passes through the canal? Do you know?
30% of the world's trade.
30%. Okay, thanks.
It's huge. It's huge. So
that's enormous.
What would be really funny is if the same thing happened again in Panama, and then you would see like Stephen Colbert and all the liberal media saying, "Oh, what a coincidence!"
Yeah, but that's, you see, the Suez Canal is mainly, it's Europe that's there a lot. It's in the chain and the supply chain that's going to be hit, because America, I don't know what amount of I have no idea what amount of shipping will get through the Suez Canal to what countries, but it's mostly for us in Europe, where things are coming from Asia.
Yes, that's why it has a very anti-Civ flavor to it. You see, I'm echoing like crazy if somebody news. Yeah, so yeah, the what was I going to say? Yeah, if it is China, it was like this is one of the last routes from the Belt and Road that ends here in Piraeus, and so that's the major trunk from the Belt and Road. So this cannot be good from China. So it looks like it it seems to me that it might have been from China, just from a few things from cyber news, but that doesn't make a lot of sense, because I think China is suffers most economically from this. It has a strong flavor of anti-Civ, or otherwise it has something to do with Iran. But the actual ship is it's a European company, so it's not a Chinese ship, which is suspicious. But anyway, it's devilishly hard to figure out what's going on. These kind of things you find out decades later. But and the other thing is the repercussions. You won't be able to tell. There'll be all sorts of repercussions, like food prices and delays and stuff, and this will be responsible. You'll never be able to connect them up. It's just too murky, the information. But anyway, the takeaway lesson is ships are extremely easy to hack, and yeah, this. If you're looking at what Uncle Ted was saying, this is exactly the kind of thing. But what the lesson here is just how damn vulnerable the whole system is. That's the takeaway. And then
this is sorry, I wanted to go back just to the beginning, just to add the point too, that supposed sandstorm, you know, I mean, a 50-kilometre-an-hour wind is bugger all. You know, they're talking about that seriously running this ship off course, and I mean, not even the made up story has got no credibility anyway.
So ships don't just you know, rock up at the canal and drift through like it's a Sunday afternoon. There's an incredible amount of bureaucracy, and they all have a pilot, and they're not one pilot from the bottom of the Suez to the top. They have like, you will have 5 or 6 pilots for each part of the canal. So the idea that you know, oh, it just got a little bit blown off course. If there's sandstorm or any kind of risk, this is one of the crucial areas of the world. They don't fuck about. They don't take risks. If there's the slightest risk, they wouldn't let a ship through. So it's all nonsense. I mean, if you just go, I mean, okay, there's a bridge here that's kind of strategic for Greece. The amount of rigmarole you have to go through to go under that bridge, for me to sail under that bridge, I have to call the guys up, and I have to drop the sails and go through an engine, and at an exact point he'll tell you go through this pillar and that pillar. And it's like, that's just a big thing in this huge strait. You know, it's like, this is one of the most, you know, strategic areas in the world. It is you know, it's defended to the hilt. And but they make it sound like a whoopsie daisy. It's like, it's just not right.
Yeah, that's the thing that got me. That the whole, it was such a flimsy. It was just so bloody weak that it was almost inviting you to sort of say, hey, go and look at this a bit more closely, because it was just such a thin story, you know. Oh, a 50-kilometre-an-hour wind, and the captain says, you know, caught the ship, and you know, oh my God, it's just.
But where's Tintin
the other
and
side of it?
Tintin and Slurry should be down there investigating and writing salacious stories and having dispatches every day on the intrigue and what it could possibly be, and getting the, and what do we get? Nothing. It means that they don't actually get revenue from, you know, how juicy a story is. It's like they get revenue from advertisers, and they don't generate.
I also think that the general public, a lot of people around me, and I've talked to a few people about this the last few days, young people, I don't think they grasp the importance of the Suez Canal. I don't think people are interested. I think there's this COVID thing going on. I think we're going to get used to see events like that happening more and more, whether they're inspired by Uncle Ted or whether they're, you know, cyber attacks or whatever.
We're in the third world war.
And nobody's going to say anything, because there's just this general apathy and ignorance. You know, if you ask a lot of people, even in Europe, where's the Suez Canal? Why is it important? How, you know? No, I mean, you would be surprised. And if you want to go to your local stupid IKEA, or I don't know, IKEA, it's European, but supermarket or anything that you from Asia, it's coming through the Suez Canal, but nobody cares. I think nobody cares.
They will shortly, because
they will.
It's about to kick them right in the crotch. But what it'll translate to is a lot of unrest, because they gonna get, say, shortages and sharps. They're gonna get all stuff like that, and then they just gonna be angry without any understanding. So it's all to the good if you're an anarchist, because all of this translates to anger against the state. So they've got into a situation where, you know, they're infantile, and big sister and the nanny state looks after you, and when nanny doesn't deliver on your porridge, there's going to be temper tantrums all over the Western world. But they won't understand the deeper thing about what's going on. But the days where people can afford to, you know, just do woke stuff and be so willfully ignorant, those will dry up quickly, because soon it becomes part of your survival to know what's going on and predicting where the next thing's coming from. So yeah, it's basically, it's good to talk about these things now, because the shock and horror is going to be awful when this reality catches up with all these kids. But anyway, while we're on this subject, we should be talking about all the wonderful bottlenecks around the world, and so that all these idiot kids.
Yes.
I had one of them on Reddit telling me, no, civilization's never going to collapse because we have the internet now. It's kind of a base foundation. Once a civilization gets to digital connectivity, it can't fall below that because you have all the knowledge and stuff. And I was like, dude, are you fucking stupid? It's like the internet goes out.
It's even more fragile.
And he says, well, the grid's not going to go out. And I said, yes, it is. My buddies are going to take it out tomorrow. You stupid idiot. And then all these kids are going to be on their phones going like, how do you get the grid back up? And it's like, oh, why haven't I got internet connection? Oh, you didn't know that needed electricity, you moron. So basically, the power grid, when the power grid goes down, there's serious repercussions. If it stays down for 72 hours, it'll take a year to get it back up again. But let's talk about all these bottlenecks. So there's the Suez
Canal. I've got one.
The Panama Canal.
Yeah, no, the one that was last year, wasn't it? Where the Straits of Hormuz was.
Yeah.
I can't remember the detail of the story, but I was just. I think that could have been a practice run or a practice demonstration that might have led to what's just happened in the Suez. It might have given somebody an idea, I think.
Basically, the Persians, the Persians their ships have been hammered, so they're trying to get oil and stuff to Syria, and the Israelis have been knocking out these ships. And so, that goes underreported. It's basically international terrorism, but, some international terrorists are, more favorable than others, apparently. So that doesn't get reported, and there's no outcry against that. But then you get this kind of thing, which might be retaliation for that and that. Yeah, the thing to look at is communications, particularly oil. So the Gulf of Hormuz, but the Straits of Malacca, the China Sea, Panama, all of these things are, and increasingly the Arctic, in the summer going through the Bering Straits and going north and is increasingly becoming strategic, and they're moving the military up there. But anyway, the undersea cables are tremendously vulnerable. So, they're probably, 12 cables or something under. No, actually, probably a lot more these days, under the North Atlantic. But they're all very focused in one place. And Africa is connected to Europe with fiber optic cables, just one or two. So a few years back, 10 years back, a ship pulled up the fiber optic cable just by accident with its anchor, and Africa was cut off from the internet for about a month. So that was, nobody knew about that.
But that was, I think you made the point somewhere, maybe it was in your book or somewhere else, that that vulnerability is being sort of artificially created by governments wanting to surveil everything.
Yeah.
They want those cables to go through a choke point so that they can get all the information. Deliberately.
Gibraltar and the UK, the Echelon surveillance. So Echelon is surveilling all the traffic, and they made all the internet traffic comes across not. They didn't want it to go through Ireland to Europe, which would be the obvious thing. So they made it come to Northumberland, and then through this big surveillance site there. Yeah, did you see that thing I just posted? They got this thing, NCF now, but Bojo's made a attacking cyber force, the National Cyber Force, which
they've just done. This has just been done in Australia in a big way. Just a few months ago, and there's this enormous, suspiciously enormous budget going into this.
Yeah.
And they've sort of said they're doing it, and they're sort of saying stuff and not saying stuff at the same time. But just looking at it from the external factors, you can read back into what the story behind it is, I guess, which is what you're just saying about the what Boris Johnson's doing, you know.
Yeah, well, when you're talking about concentration of these choke points in terms of digital communications, if you have a look at Gibraltar, they all funneled into Gibraltar because that's, you know, Africa's connection, and Britain won't give up Gibraltar to Spain because of its espionage potential. So when I landed in Gibraltar a few years back, it's just filled with these young English guys, and you know, in the clubs and stuff. It's about, you know, it's like 10 guys to one one girl, and so yeah, I got chatting to them and trying to do my usual thing, where play the little game always players, like how much SIGINT can you get out of an arse, and yeah, they're all in signals intelligence. The whole of Gibraltar, everybody sees this big rock. I think it's a big rock. It's actually a honeycomb. It's just hollowed out completely with all these facilities. But if you know that, you just, you know, if you look on a marine chart, they have all the cables listed. You can go and look at Navionics charts or something like that, and you know, they're all there in plain sight. For, you know, incredibly. So if you go on like Google Maps or something like that, then they pixel out strategic things. But they can't really do that on a marine chart, because they have to warn shipping that, like, oh, there's a big, you know, marine cable or a pipeline or something like that. And so, but it is all there, all sitting invulnerable. There's no security and obfuscation that the system has. So most of the computing, for example, is done in Amazon Web Services now, and in Alibaba. The two biggest cloud services are Alibaba and Amazon Web Services, and all the government stuff is largely now on Amazon. And their facilities are distributed all over the world in hard sites. But you can find them. they all out there. They you know, they have power backup and stuff, but not that long. Their power's not backed up for very long. They have a lot of solar and stuff, but yeah, if you go on the dark web, or the onion ring and stuff, it's like all of this stuff is open knowledge. So I don't think the average person realizes. They think of the state as hugely powerful in that, but it's not. It's very, very stretched extremely thin. It's all a big paper tiger. When push comes to shove, the state is you know, they have nuclear weapons and, you know, aircraft carriers. But if you go and have a look at like the Oregon coast or the Washington coast, is like they have one national forest guy who's the Coast Guard. Just one guy for the entire coastline of Oregon. They might have changed that, but certainly in 2001, they had one guy guarding the entire coast of Oregon.
The only thing is, I would say, saying about those undersea cables, is that I think Facebook, I saw a program a while ago, Facebook are just investing like trillions probably in all this new infrastructure. So they're rolling out new undersea cables, apparently. I can't remember where. I don't know if it was in the Atlantic, but you know how they're trying to, so it's not all, you know, still all that ancient old state apparatus. Some of it is going to be quite new. And I can't imagine Facebook and Google and Amazon just letting it. They'll probably have some drone shit monitoring it or something.
No, they won't have that. The way they tackle it is they don't guard it that way. It's too expensive. So there's a lot of impetus, you know, a lot of the stuff in space, like Starlink and, you know, Musk and stuff, getting internet link-ins, and also the Bitcoin guys, they're getting Bitcoin satellites and stuff. But the way they tackle it is with redundancy. So the entire point of the internet was to have a redundant network. So the internet came about because DARPA was looking for a way to survive a nuclear attack during the Cold War. So it has a lot of different pathways. Now, there are a number of things to note. One of them is the network is a scale-free network, and it also mimics all the cities. So if you look at cities and towns and villages and stuff, they also a scale-free network. Now, the number of properties, if you look in terms of that kind of mesh network, is that one of them is that then there aren't any single choke points, but you know, that you only need 1 in 20 nodes, so 5% of those nodes, to be taken out, and the whole thing goes down. The network's too sparse. That's the one thing. In terms of saturation and things like that, if 50% of the nodes get overloaded to capacity, it'll tip into a new phase. So all of these things are, you know, are really vulnerable, even though they have a lot of redundancy built in. But in all cases, if you examine these closely, nobody designs these things for resilience. It's just, you know, capitalism is really cheap in this area, and you know, everybody is so worried about profits they try and cut corners. So although they make these networks as robust as possible, they will make mistakes. There'll be huge blind spots that even they don't see, because nobody is ever given the job to say, go and make sure that Google's network is absolutely secure, and then there are no vulnerable points that could be taken out. You know, they don't think that way. So they think in terms of you know, statistics and broader gathering and surveillance and stuff, and you know, so what I mean is, if you think of it in terms of the ants and the grasshoppers, the ants know the vulnerable points. If it's like the office space, there's this guy in the, you know, sitting down in the cellar who's been completely ostracized by society. He has a lot of time to sit down there and think of the vulnerabilities on the system. So he knows stuff that no one else would know.
It's like with, you know, where all these organizations, Facebook and all the big corporations, they'll pay handsome money to, you know, white hat hackers to find vulnerabilities, like bug bounties, won't they? And you can imagine, well, it's always easier to be the attacker, isn't it, than being on the defense in these systems, or the sort of line of work that you used to do, you know, in computers and systems. From my understanding, from my layman's understanding, it seems that it's harder to be on the defense than being on the offense and looking for a loophole or
you only have to find one loophole, but you have to defend everything. So the thing is that those white hat, black hat things is they're not really done as much as they advertise. What those most things, because it's capitalist America and capitalist world, really, those kind of things are arse covering. So they're not really like a military establishment. If you had a military commander whose life was at risk, you would make very sure that his fortifications were secure. But if you're talking about an executive, they just want to cover their ass. So they'll go to Kaspersky or something like that, or some bunch of charlatans, and they just want to be able to say, we covered our ass, we made sure we were secure, we got a check in the box, or we signed up to this security service, or we did Gartner or Forrester. But they're not sincere about security. They're just sincere about covering their ass. So again, that's a big vulnerability. And they love to offload security to third parties. So, you know, you can make a career out of a consultant as long a very good one and lucrative one, as long as you understand that you're the fall guy. They're just looking for a guy to indemnify them and take the fall when there's a vulnerability. That's all. They don't want you to do anything other than that. And so, yeah, so the system has huge flaws in it. But I'll tell you, one of the things where they're making the biggest mistake known to man is they for a long while they've been getting, they used to get hackers and just throw the book at them. By 2000, around 2000, at the turn of the century, they did the normal totalitarian thing where they just ratchet up the penalties, and basically if you're caught hacking or caught on a government server, they just give you the death penalty. And then after a while, they started to realize, well, this is not a good plan. Well, they started to get hackers and turn them. So they would get the guys. You can see this in there was some movie that did this. I can't remember what the movie was. It Breaking Bad, or I can't remember if they were.
No, what was it? Was it the 80s one where they hacked in and sent missiles? It was like a war game.
Oh no, not the war game. No, I mean the thing. Oh, I know what it was. It was House of Cards.
Oh,
so,
okay.
House of Cards, they had all of that stuff was accurate. What the guys are doing is, because they have such draconian legislation, such draconian penalties for hacking now. I mean, child molestation, you might get 5 years, but minor hacking, 30 years minimum. So it gives you the idea of what a threat this stuff is. But the thing is,
like Charlie Shrem, remember him, the Bitcoin scapegoat guy, Charlie Shrem?
Yeah,
he's in there for life. Because he was the guy who allowed.
You know what they got him for was basically betting drug dealing. So they said, people are using Bitcoin for drugs. So Charlie Shrem changed.
He was hosting the servers or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, but it wasn't even one of the guys on the servers. It was one of the guys on the servers. Some transacted with somebody else, but it's basically two parties removed, and the prosecution said, well, you must have known that your exchange was using for drug dealing. And they said, like, yeah, but everything is. It's like, you think the banks don't know that, money's being taken out of an ATM and used for a drug transaction on the streets? And of course they know. They're laundering. I mean, HSBC and stuff, they're laundering drug money. All the banks launder. If you go down to Tampa or Florida, the banks are like fucking Scarface Inc. Basically, a large chunk of change comes from drug running. But they never get prosecuted.
Yeah, the FCA are going after NatWest. That came out the last couple of weeks. Now the government are going to sell all the shares in NatWest for money laundering, because But
it's not the cost of doing business. They hardly get a rap on the hand for the billions they get. But yeah, what I was saying was that they would get the hackers though, and they would turn them. And then they decided, well, the best hackers are black hat hackers, because the white hat guys are like goody two shoes conformist, and they hang around with the nice crowd. But the black hat guys are the really seriously knowledgeable ones. So that they would, faced with these draconian penalties, they would offer them a plea bargain, and then they would say, come and work for the NSA. Well, that's a huge fucking mistake. If you're a linear thinking Mike Pompeo arsehole, then you kind of think very linearly. You think, everybody's like me and thinks America's wonderful and stuff, and I just have to put you on the right place, show you, young man, how to be patriotic, and give you a fucking pittance of a salary, and now you completely turned an American. It's like, no, of course not. These guys are as resentful as all fuck. So basically, they're building up armies of people that are resentful. So if you work in the NSA, what the hell do you do? Of course, you can network with all the other guys that think you were stiff. So they've been building this up for a long time, and then they got bitten rather badly in 2015, I think. they got bitten badly by apparently one guy who's called the Shadow Brokers. And he destroyed the NSA. The NSA was fucked after that, and still is. The NSA, they still haven't recovered from the Shadow Broker. But that's a guy inside who knew all the tricks of the trade. He sold the entire NSA cyber toolkit to some unknown buyer, a state buyer, and sold it first for Bitcoin, and then I think the final transaction was on Monero. But you saw Bitcoin went from like 2 cents and went up to 70,000. The reason was that all these guys, all these state actors were bidding for the toolkit. So that completely passed no notice for the mainstream. But yeah, that guy, the Shadow Brokers, he's still out there, and I believe he's I better not say too much. But I believe that I certainly believe that the 2016 election was hacked by him. So in essence, he basically put Trump in the presidency as a joke. It was like giving a finger to the system, because Trump himself was surprised as anybody that he got elected, and the reason was he wasn't supposed to be. It was an upset, and it was a hack. The guys have since come out in testimony and said that it was a hack. They've admitted in congressional testimony. It's reported, not widely reported, but kind of softly. You can see the transcripts and that. The guys come and say, and then one of the guys was actually confronted. I can't remember who he was, but one of the senior military guys was confronted, saying, like, was it actually hacked? Not by social media, by the voting machines. And he said yes. And they said, well, why don't we do something about it and go on the attacking? And the guy said, look, we can't do that because we've only had one election hacked, and America has hacked 30 elections in other countries. So we don't want to start getting too hot on hacking elections, because we're the guys who've benefited out of it most, which is an extraordinary thing. You would think that would be plastered all over the newspaper, but it all gets buried. But I also wonder if guys like that are on the inside and they're just blowing smoke in these congressmen's faces, because they have immense control through all of these things, and then they're doing psyopses all the time, and this is the consequence of the war in Iraq. Is in 9/11 is Thucydides said, in ancient Greece, it talks about the war came home, because Athens went to war against Sparta, and it was a huge bloody war, and it was the same thing as America. It was better to go and tackle them over there on the Peloponnese than have them come in. We have to deal them on home territory. So they're saying, Athens sends all its soldiers into the Peloponnese War, but they get traumatized. They get PTSD, because running around on a battlefield with blood and guts and stuff is brutal on those battlefields. And they come back with PTSD. When they come back, then they cause trouble. They cause the soldiers returning causes trouble for Athens. So Athens never kept the war away, because it came back in the PTSD of the soldiers. Now, America did exactly the same thing in Iraq. These vets have come back extremely fucked up. The guys that were in Fallujah and all of these things, first of all, they're all dealing in drugs and stuff. And then they all come back to the States. The war doesn't stay in Iraq. All the atrocities, the 500,000 children that America killed, all the drone strikes and all of the Abu Ghraib and all of that shit, it doesn't stay in Iraq. It comes back in the heads of all these young guys. So if you look at the Capitol insurrection and that, those guys are vets, and they want revenge for for the system, and that's the war comes home, and that's what we're seeing, and then what these guys are doing, like Michael Flynn and all of these guys, they they're doing a psyops. They're doing a psyops. They're hacking the elections. Democracy ended fucking decades ago. It's just a result of cyber wars fought at elections. And so we're in one huge psyops, and QAnon, to use a keyword, is a big psyops. And so, I think XR is also, but at the end of the day, as I say, well, we got to step up to the plate and start doing psyops, and turn it around, because ultimately, the state loses. The state needs harmony and concord, and it's just such an easy target to sow discord. So we need to, goddess Eris. Let's go back to the Greek mythology and look at Eris. But we need to do an Eris, and it's easy. I think we'll win. I think we'll win, because the state requires everything to have law and order, and we just need discord. So we'll win.
Yeah, that's really great summary. Sorry, just to quickly say about the XR psyop, do you think that, so you obviously state actors trying to, basically the end goal being that then harsher draconian rules come in for, cracking down on people on the street, locking people up in their homes, ties in with lockdown and things? Or is it something, I don't know, I don't, simpler than that?
No, I don't. So Priti Patel is just a psychopath, and so that's the natural inclination of a psychopath. I don't think they planned it for the lockdown, because they can do it very easily. They can just do it with one jihadi attack, right? So what they do is they get local talent. They like talent scouts in the music industry, and so they get local talent and cultivate it. So if you're there, like Gail Bradbrook and Roger Hallam, they're the salt of the earth. There's no ways that they moles or basically double agents or anything like that. They're the salt of the earth. What they do is they infiltrate the organization and fuck with their heads, and they don't know it. So Roger Hallam, and they talking to people like Chenoweth. Chenoweth is a state actor. So
the same with like they did with the Black Panthers in the 70s.
So I don't know why Gail and Roger didn't go, instead of going reading all this civil rights bullshit in universities, why didn't they go and read up on COINTEL ops and all of that? That would be, find out what happened to Occupy and how that was steered. But I think there was 5,000 something. I heard something like there were 5,000 undercover agents just from one agency, I think from the FBI, in Occupy. 5,000. It must be like every third guy, or maybe like there's one activist and three goons. But that's the kind of things we're talking. But you see that their aim is not to shut the guys down. They're not to do ban XR or get draconian. It's to bleed off resources. So look at all the resources and time and stuff wasted in XR, in stuff that's absolutely ineffectual. So Priti Patel might, she's concerned about policing. And so she might come in and then twist a few MPs' arms to make the bobbies' lives easier. But I don't think she was strategically planning these ops. They've done it at an entirely different level. They're done undercover. So, but yeah, it's very naive. I mean, XR is a success because it's taken a whole sway, the whole generation. It's the peace movement of the CND in Britain of our age. So it's dragged all these cupcakes, all these snowflakes into the movement and educated them. They started off singing "Police, we love you" and stuff like that, and now I've realized that they've been fucked over. This is huge progress. I mean, don't knock this. This has been a great success. So there was like move on to the next level, but I think the next level is to go underground and start doing sophisticated psyops. You can't, an above ground organization like that is just, you know, it's basically just for green tech and stuff. The funders, I mean, the funders are banks. Gail went around to HSBC and stuff like that. It's like, whoa, that's tainted money. You can't take that money. But they didn't know. They're innocent. So yeah. But yeah, I think it's the XR is not finished. I mean, it's just, it'll carry on. This is how it starts. It goes from education to education. But what these people are being educated in is the state, and the guys in charge of the state. They are psychopaths. They don't believe it because, you know, they're so glib. All these guys like Biden and stuff, they're such polished, glib assholes. I mean, guys like Obama and stuff, they just, you know, in some ways I almost prefer Trump because he's more honest. He's more blatantly a psychopath. The other guys are just hidden psychopaths. So it's worse.
Can I ask you a question again? You started earlier about bottlenecks. Now we're talking about the Suez Canal. We were talking about underwater cables. I've heard in various meetings we've had a few mentioned, but I think it's something that I'd like to go a bit deeper. I mean, I'm interested in those complex, you know, yeah, because they're
very vulnerable in LNG, liquid natural gas. So there's a tier story waiting to happen. So what? That's the kind of thing you mean, Sophie, like that. Yeah. So if you, it's good to study each one of these sectors and see their vulnerabilities. So one of the things with LNG is that, and a lot of other commodities, they have trading hubs. So they're very few trading hubs in the US where suppliers actually send the LNG and it gets traded and then taken to distributors. But it's all concentrated in one place. It's remarkable. But that's what capitalism often does. It concentrates things into one place. But so, you know, a gas distribution terminal like that, all the power stations are linked to that, and you know, if those ever go out, the grid will go down and never come back up. Yeah. So, but this, if you study network maps and stuff, you see there are lots of vulnerable things, but exchanges, commodity exchanges, and things like that are hard to distribute. And in terms of LNG, an LNG carrier, a liquid natural gas, a freighter, is really 3 atomic bombs, just basically all in one freighter. They may have 3 cylindrical tanks on them under very, very high pressure. If you look at the energy in one of those, the energy is equivalent to like a Hiroshima bomb. So they have double walls and things on those tanks. But I can't imagine, you know, LNG terminals are all over big capitals and cities, because what happened was the energy industry changed. Greens and activists don't really know this because they're clueless, but the energy transition happened already. There isn't going to be any more energy transition. There's not going to be a transition to solar panels and wind, because energy transition happened. What it was coal to LNG, and it happened you know, around about 2005 or thereabouts, and there's a mad scramble for liquid natural gas, and the price of energy plummeted. And the reason was that the Pennsylvania fields was discovered to have almost unlimited amounts of natural gas, and nobody knew that. And suddenly America woke up to the fact that there was a very strange story. It was basically, there was an engineer, mining engineer, who wondered. He just wondered casually one day, you know, how much LNG is there in the Pennsylvania field? Everybody knew it was a lot. There's standard formulas and stuff that the guys run, but nobody did it because Pennsylvania field is old, and it's, you know, it's, people are looking in new areas. They didn't have any focus on that. It was considered old hat. It was kind of like, you know, everybody knew it. It's kind of, sorry to say, it's kind of like Australia. Everybody knows it's down there, but nobody cares much. The Pennsylvania field was that kind of thing in the energy industry. And then this engineer ran these figures, and he almost fell on his face. He said, "Hang on a minute. We have enough energy in the Pennsylvania field to run America's entire energy economy for more than 1,000 years, maybe like 2,000 years." And so he looked at it again and again and again, and couldn't find anything wrong with it. So he started to tell people, and they had the same reaction. They said, "This has got to be wrong." And then eventually they came to the conclusion, no, he was right. It's almost unlimited LNG. So what happened instantly was the whole world pivoted to liquid natural gas and moved off coal as soon as it was economically viable to move off in terms of power. And that's where we are. So then, but what happened is all the cities around America, they started putting in massive LNG terminals and bringing in these LNG tankers. Now, if the public knew, I mean, say in London, I think it's somewhere in the East End or somewhere up the Thames, they keep them away from a big center like London. But, you know, if the public knew the power in these things and how vulnerable they were, I mean, I don't know how much they test a tank like that, but I can't imagine they would take an RPG or anything like that. In terms of they're not Hindenburgs. The energy density is extraordinary. Just go and Google it.
Hugh, I'm wondering that the tanks are probably double walled just for insulation, because
for
of
safety, and because they're cryogenic, right? So basically, what they do is, here's the end of capitalism right here, is to transport it and make it more economical. They lower the temperature of the gas so that it liquefies. So that's why it's liquid. It's a huge amount of gas that's brought to a temperature, cryogenic temperatures enough to lower it. So part of the reason for the double walls is to lower the temperature. But they try to keep secret the configuration of these things, but it's and the design of them, because of security reasons. But you know, you can easily find pictures and drawings.
I think with those some of the ships, I mean, I haven't gone into it, but I assume that if anything happened to the ship's engine, the refrigeration system would stop, and that would be pretty exciting too, because you wouldn't be able to.
On that score, I'm not sure if they continuously refrigerated, or do they need refrigeration equipment? I thought once they're under pressure, it's kind of like it's exactly like your
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's like your
maybe you're right. Yeah. In other words, once you've reduced the temperature and liquefied it, as long as you can maintain the pressure, it'll stay there. Yeah. I was under the impression they still had to keep refrigerating it, but I might be wrong. I'm not sure about that.
I think, there might be certain parts of the piping and stuff like that. There might be bits and pieces that they have to have refrigerating, but I'm not. It wouldn't be difficult to find out if those ships need, refrigeration equipment. I doubt it, because that would be really, really, really unsafe. I mean, I kind of feel it would make it so unsafe that it would make LNG unviable as an energy source. But
well, nothing is stopping the madness anywhere else.
Well, but I mean, the thing is, though, I wouldn't recommend anybody just goes out and monkey wrenches is one of these things. the way to think about them is kind of the way XR was thinking with, you know, that Earth, truthteller.earth. You know, basically having a whistleblower report and trying to tell people how vulnerable our system is, because the general perception is that it's really robust. But if you think it's better than attacking these things, it's better to just know that that's the vulnerability, and then you can see other systemic risks. So one of them is so then once you know that's the actual point, it's thinking a little bit lowbrow to thinking, okay, well, now you do an operation against one of those things. You said, what would be the result? It would just be a spectacular, and I doubt you could, you know, stop them moving or anything like that. It would you might raise the public awareness, but you'd terrify people, and the mortality rate would be high. But you know, think about it in terms of, say, insurance, because all of these things exist, and insurers and stuff would know that. If you have a look at the insurance system, you could see vulnerabilities, say, in reinsurance and stuff like that. A lot of these things, like Lloyd's and stuff, are pretty shaky underneath it all. And if you found one reinsurer like ING was a bottleneck in the 2008 financial crisis, because it was the insurer for all these people that had derivatives, and there's no way it could cover them. So for example, you could stop the movement of LNG much more effectively, for example, if you took out the insurance industry, because all the regulations and that, so you can't move a ship without insurance, and if an insurer went bust, a big insurer went bust, those ships would stay in port because they wouldn't be able to they wouldn't be able to cover the regulations and move, and so, you know, that's the way to think of it. But in essence, I think the system is most vulnerable in the financial realm. So I think that if you follow that line, you follow all the lines of the most sensitive, dependent things, it's capitalism. So, you know, where the boss is weakest of all is in his bank account. So all these guys are frauds, right? And the whole capitalist system is a huge fraud. So if you take any guy from Trump to Hearst or any of these guys, they're all really bankrupt. They're just bankrupt in such spectacular style that nobody can call them on it, because otherwise they take down the whole world. But all these, you know, like Deutsche Bank and all these guys, they're in exactly the same position. They're rapacious, unrestricted capitalist whores. And so they've completely overextended themselves. And so that's where their vulnerability is. If you study them, you'll find a weakness. And then something like, you know, why I'm so keen on a debt strike and silver squeeze and stuff like that is somebody like JP Morgan could take the whole house of cards down, the whole damn thing. And they can't patch it up by printing money or using MNT. It was, you know, so yeah, I mean, I honestly think if you wanted to bring the whole system to a dead stop, I think you look at things like a silver squeeze, because all of them are running frauds, right? And then that would bring home the fraud. Yeah.
But what's going on with the silver? Because I had echoes from London and Paris and different places where small people now can hardly buy coins and bars of silver, that it's totally there's been a kind of a clamp down. Is that true? I don't know.
No, there's scarcity. No, there's scarcity because nobody has any trust in the system. They've done the military lost 1.3 trillion. It just went, the U.S. military 1.3 trillion. The GDP of America is like 14 trillion. The U.S. lost, like under the sofa, 1.3 trillion. Oops, sorry, misplaced it. Don't know where it went. So and then so, you know, that's the kind of fraud and abuse in the system. And then, you know, they just did 1.9 trillion. I think they're doing 400 billion every month. They're just pumping in, and everybody knows this. So then, the reason why the stock market is going up is because it's just a monstrous bubble. They're just, flushing money into the economy, but into assets, not into the high street or anything like that. So it's just massively inflating the stock market, and the bond market. But nobody's fooled by this. There's no single trader or bond broker they're terrified, because there's going to be a reckoning. Just know everybody's handing around this lit match, wondering who's going to burn their fingers. But they're all ready to drop the match and run out the room, and they all know that everybody else is. So they're playing chicken, and where this all comes down to reality is some real commodity that they can't fuck with, like gold and silver. And they all know that, and that's why there's no physical silver, because the preppers and everybody, gold bugs, they're all sticking it under the mattress. And then these big funds like SLV, JP Morgan, the bullion banks, they don't have any, they've passed up this gold and silver 100 times. So they're doing a massive fraud, and there's no silver left in London. It's all con game. So they're running scared of an accounting. Everybody's running scared of big accounting.
I actually think if there's one thing that, I know you don't agree with cryptocurrencies, but if there's one thing it has done, it's woken up like Gen X and the millennials to the fraud that's happening. And so that is a bonus in one way. But it's crazy. I mean, you think, when you say, I think, isn't it like quarter of all US dollars that that are in existence were created just in the last year or something ridiculous? It's crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
Staggering.
I mean, in terms of the acceleration of the Great Acceleration, like half the CO2 was done in the last 15 years or something like that. It's extraordinary numbers.
I think yeah.
What is it?
I think it was 30, actually. Since
half in the last 30 years. But so what nobody will say is the C word. It's basically, you're not allowed to say what everybody knows, and that's it's China. It's all freaking China. But China's a basket case for debt too. So it really is debt. If the hoi polloi, us, just did a strike on retail banking, there's 1.6 trillion in student loans in the US. There's Fannie and Freddie and shit almost took the system down with 2 trillion or something. But if you got minor defaults, if students got together and defaulted on 50% of the loans, that would be the end of this show. And the thing is with the debt strike is that if the great unwashed realized the power that they had in terms of debt, rent, default, and tax default, if they did it and got a big reaction, there were big repercussions. It's kind of like Wall Street bets. They can kind of smell blood, and they kind of realize that the system is vulnerable. What they'll do is repeat it and ratchet it up. So it's kind of like, the peasants, where, one of them comes forward and throws a stone, and then everybody sees, oh shit, these walls are all made of paper. And then as soon as they all realize that, 1,000 stones. So the thing about a debt strike is to just put a chink in the armor. And then everybody would be like, hey, this dragon has rubber teeth. And then the system's really bad, because everybody will pile in. You see, that there's a lot of latent potential, I think, for mob mentality of, there's growing resentment and revenge. And if one person makes an inroad, like, for example, like Wall Street bets, and everybody goes, hey, you kidding? That works. This the kind of network effects and bandwagoning that will kick in and it'll go extremely fast, kind of like the Arab rebellion. It'll take the establishment really by surprise. Oh, have I been talking for a hell of a long time? Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. No, it's brilliant. It's really good. But we've been going for like 3 hours, I think, altogether.
Oh shit! I'm
including Lierre.
sorry. Okay, well, we should wrap it up. Do you have another question?
Well, we take a no. I think I was interested in going into the business with that ship. I think that's. I don't know. It's just my intuition. I don't want to sort of emphasize it too much. I just think it's going to be a trigger point for something major. I just got this feeling about it. That's why it was interesting to go into it for a while.
So yeah, if you study networks and stuff like the aviation network, there are lots of bottlenecks in aviation in terms of insurance and refueling, provisioning, all that kind of thing. But you know, the thing is to study it and study it and study it. So what happened in World War II was there were these stories like the Schweinfurt thing about the ball bearings and stuff. But where those things come from is a masses of amounts of intelligence gathering. So the US made a lot of inroads against the Japanese, and it was purely because some alert GI found a maintenance book in a garbage can at an airfield that was captured from the Japanese, and he had the sense to just send it in to military intelligence. They looked through that maintenance thing, and they could tell that the guys were running out of hinges and ball bearings and rubber and stuff. But they looked at those materials and they said, oh, the cheapest and easiest is to hit this material like rubber or something. And then they found that, well, all the rubber production is only like 3 sides, and then easily take them out. So it's that kind of thinking, and then so it's kind of like a lot of research, and then a lot of very little in terms of operational expenditure. But
yeah, but as you're saying, a lot of the information that's.
But even there, you can be. Even there, you can also just the fact that you have the strength, capability, and you announce the fact that you're going to do it is powerful. So you want to get to a position where you do nothing, but the threat alone sends terror through the system.
That was one thing that you brought up in the talk with Lierre earlier, and I don't know that it got through to her that the threat itself is enough. The threat of violence or collapse is enough, but you're right that at some point somebody might be called on the bluff. But I don't know if that got through to her that the threat of violence could be enough.
Yeah, the major thing is the if you walk tall and carry a big stick, the chances of you having to use it are vastly diminished. So if you have a threatening posture, that the chances of you being called on it are there but low. If you are called on it, you have to react immediately, so that you leave nobody in any doubt that you are serious.
I think that reminds me of what you said about the depth strike in one of your earlier videos last year. The fact that even the project is there, and that the possibility that people could default could be enough to bring down the system without having to.
Yes, it's
I remember that.
Bad psyops to actually expend lives and material in an operation is actually bad psyops, because it's all psychological. I mean, it's kind of unethical to use people's lives for a psychological goal, because if you know your job, it should be all psychological, and so the net effect is to try and achieve the same thing with psyops. So for example, Exxon now is talking about COP26, and these guys are kind of divided because there's some clueless kids that are like, well, this is our final year and we must go to COP26, and they don't know that it's a complete cop-out, and COP26 was always funded by the oil industry, and they're just there to make sure there's no climate action. But a few people, and the young kids in exile, they figured that out, that basically it's all a put-up job and a farce. And so, you know, I'm saying, well, boycott the bastard thing. That's the best thing you can do. And so that makes a statement and stuff. But what, in terms of PSYOPs, the cheapest thing you can do is something like, you know, loudly announce an operation, like to say, well, we have infiltrated COP26 in Glasgow, and we're going to spike the water or something. We're going to get LSD and we're going to spike it so that basically we're going to, you know, and if you get that in the press and everybody will debate whether it's wrong or right and the ethics of it and blah, 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 blah. And then you do nothing, but you claim that you did. So then it makes the whole thing a farce. You say you get all the clips out of the COP26 where the guys are on the podium. You see, look at this guy, he's on acid. Look at him, we got him. And then they'll all argue whether you did get them or not. But you see, the effort is nothing. The effort is absolutely nothing. You haven't even done anything illegal, I hope. but you see, that's what PSYOPs is you really showing, you using their weaknesses. And their weakness in COP26 is it's a farce. But the weakness is that it's a farce, that it has to be credible. So if you just make it utterly uncredible, which is to claim that COP26 everybody was on acid and you could see it, well, it's pretty difficult to tell whether somebody was on acid, but I bet you could get some footage out of the normal COP, which would make people wonder. And then that's your victory, because you've got through to the public that young people have lost interest in the COP. I mean, I don't think there would be a COP27 after a fiasco like that, because why would they do it? Everybody's seen through the farce. But you see now, think what Exile's likely to do. They're likely to go up there, have a whole lot of people arrested. Basically they're reinforcing that COP26 is legit. And it's like, don't do that. Do the opposite. Try and think up ways where you can delegitimize it. That's PSYOPs. Well, we better end it there. That was long.
Yeah, I think it's good.
That was great.
We might want to talk about it a little more, just about that topic of PSYOPs. I think, I don't know, I'd be interested to know, is it something to start out small, like within yourself, and then, I don't know, make it grow, or, yeah.
Yes. So I'm doing a video on it. I'll do a video. I'm editing it down now, and because Stephen Hazen didn't want to be interviewed, I thought I'd get the TED video and just comment on it. So basically, I turned into a big hit job on it, which is kind of unfortunate, because I mean, all these guys mean well and stuff, and I think they're just liberals, and they want to protect society, and they think that's the right thing to do. But so it's kind of unfortunate to use them as a punching doll, but what the hell? See how it turns out. But anyway, I also want to use that to introduce people in exile into PSYOPs and how it's done. The greatest danger for PSYOPs is that people will get squeamish, because you can't do PSYOPs without fucking yourself up too. See, all the guys during the Cold War, all the guys that were fighting the clandestine war and doing the great game, they all fucked themselves up in the head. They didn't know what they touched completely with reality, and you have to, because it's like it's all smoke and mirrors, and And so, yeah, they all went psychotic. It was part and parcel of the game. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's what we need.
Operation Mindfuck.
Yeah. Robert Anton Wilson and those guys. Yeah. Yeah, it's you want to fuck with people's minds and as cheaply as possible. So it's a battle of wits. All this is, the entire thing is vast psychotherapy, so that basically we can all resolve ourselves into one superorganism. The human organism is really just on the cusp of being a eusocial superorganism. And the reason what's preventing it is all these individualists and egos and stuff like that. But tipping it over into superorganism, kind of like in the Matrix, is what it's all about. And to do that is pure psychology. So you don't want to wreck people's lives and make widows and stuff. But the rules of the game says you have to be prepared to, otherwise otherwise you will have to.
Hugh, did you say something last time about expanding the ego to I'm just thinking about what you said about this.
Yeah. Meaningless.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's the same as what you're just saying, really, that to create the superorganism, you expand the individual egos out to encompass everything, or all of the individual egos.
It's the boundaries of self.
Yeah,
what we're all discovering is that you're one self. This the same thing that the same thing you do with your alien cortex as an individual. You do with the meta-alien cortex. The same thing is happening with the meta-alien cortex. But the meta-aliens, just like you have to go psychotic to actually, rewire your brain, the entire superorganism has to go psychotic. So the world has to go nuts like this. It's not a bad thing. It's a birthing process. But the more nuts and sooner you can make everybody go nuts, the quicker you'll get into the other side, right? So it's kind of like a quick birth. You don't want to string it out. And what people without knowledge will do is string it out. Things like geoengineering and stuff are bad for the planet, but they terribly retrogressive for people's psychological process. And that's probably a good place to stop.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Hugh. That's great.
Well, thanks.
Thank
everybody.
you, everybody.
Nice
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Right. All right.
See you
Bye.